Today, millions of South Africans believe that South Africa is on the verge of a major economic collapse, which will soon be entering another Great Depression. But only a small percentage of those people are prepared for that to happen. The sad truth is, majority of South Africans would not last more than a month on what they have stored up in their homes. Economy is collapsing. So just think of what will happen while on top of the problems we have are increasing each day. The question is, are you prepared? So just how would you survive if you suddenly could not rely on the huge international corporate giants to feed, clothe, and supply you and your family? Do you have a plan? Unless you already live in a cave or you are a complete and total mindless follower of establishment media, you should be able to see clearly that every day our society is vulnerable than it has ever been. This year, there have been unprecedented number of large earthquakes around the world, and volcanoes all over the globe are awakening. You can just take a look at what happened in Haiti and in Iceland to see how devastating a natural disaster can be. Not only that, but we have a world that is full of lunatics in position of power, and if one of them decides to set off a nuclear, chemical, or biological weapon in a major city, it could paralyze an entire religion. The question here comes again: are we as South Africans prepared, and do we think we could be able to survive this Great Depression? Strengthen family and community bonds. During the Great Depression, it wasn't uncommon to have grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins living in the same house or vehicle. With so many displaced, it was critical to rely on extended family for help. The same was true of neighbors, and you would see people donating meals and money whenever possible. Some communities even organized what they called surprise parties. They would collect food and necessities, including cash, and then designate a particular family to receive the collection at each surprise party. This spirit of generosity and community bonds is apparent in many stories from the Great Depression. The people who did it well during this difficult time were often those who depended on family and friends and were able to be depended on by others. Take the time to establish and strengthen these bonds with neighbors and your local community. Now, don't wait until an economic collapse makes everyone desperate. During periods of economic hardship, the last thing you want to do is rely on external systems for your own food sources. Today, with a growing urban population, it's less common to possess basic gardening knowledge. We've lost that skill overall in our culture. But in the case that grocery stores become too expensive or simply run out of food during a financial meltdown, it will be essential to know how to grow your own food. Take the time now to learn how to plant and harvest foods, whether in your house, backyard, or in your rooftop. Turn to a barter system if banking systems shut down. In the years and decades before the Great Depression, banks were revered. No one ever considered the idea that they could fail and that their money would simply disappear. When many of the banks closed down as a result of the crisis, the only cash people had was the one they had on hand or stored at home. This was unfortunate because banks would close down with no warning, leaving no time to make withdrawals from accounts, and people were forced to rely on other forms of valuable exchange. Bartering is an old age practice that human civilizations have used for generations, even before banks were created. During the Great Depression, payment was often made with eggs, milk, samp. Bartering was also beneficial because it meant that families could add different types of food to their meals, expanding variety of food they could consume. Bartering makes an additional case for learning to grow. Hence, it gives you more of a base to use in negotiations and trades. Bear in mind that food isn't the only valuable item during the Great Depression. Things like wood could be collected, split, and exchanged as firewoods. Don't rely on credit or loans. Too many of us rely on credit cards and loans from the bank to make big-ticket purchases. However, during the Great Depression, many people had to buy their first cars and homes in one lump sum since they couldn't rely on a bank to give them a loan. To do this, they would live with family members and save whatever cash they would as they worked. Avoid taking out a loan and going into debt, and start saving a supply of cash now. You should also make sure you have a supply of assets outside of cash or credit, whether it be houses, land, or precious metals. Make wise investments into long-lasting items of value. As we have seen with the Great Depression, keeping the majority of your wealth and money stored at the bank isn't exactly the most secure solution. Remain positive. Aside from relying on barter systems, growing your food, and learning to hunt, there is a great deal of mental resilience needed to survive tough events like a Great Depression. According to Han, head of global research at Elliott Wave International, we think the major economies are on the cusp of this turning into the worst recession we have seen in 10 years. With prediction like this, there's cause for preparation. And as one woman who survived the Great Depression shared, Poppy always said the world turns and everything that has happened would happen again. I am sure if he were still with us today, he would be wanting us to start a garden and buy some chickens. Take these lessons in stride, and learning from the past makes all the difference when life, as we know, it changes drastically. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and also like and share with your friends and family so that they are aware of what's going on around the economy and get prepared in case something like this happens.